Hey everyone. So I'm here at the Ottawa airport, kind of waiting for my wife to get off the plane. She's arriving from Vancouver. And due to the heavy storm that we just had about a half an hour, 40 minutes ago, the plane's landed thankfully, but it's sitting at the tarmac waiting for a gate so they can let the passengers out. So I've been sitting here for the last hour now, and no sign of movement. It kind of sucks. But hey, this is a perfect opportunity to do a YouTube upload. This is going to be one of my first sort of uploads straight from my phone to my YouTube channel. So let's see what that's going to be like. So I'm in my Audi S4. So let's kind of walk through some of the features on the interior, especially the infotainment system and the virtual cockpit. Now what we're looking at here is the virtual cockpit. This is one of the coolest things that made me trade in the B8 Audi S5 for this B9 Audi S4. It was the interior tech that really pushed me over the edge. Exterior wise, the design, I really like the B8, the previous generation, the B8.5s, way better than the new generation Audi S5, S4 designs. But anyways, that's for another debate, another video, another discussion. So let's let's look at what the virtual cockpit's all about. So typically, I like leaving the virtual cockpit in the sport mode, where you have the RPM gauge right in the center, and onto the left and right, it's the onto the right there, it's the date and time, which is what I care about all the time. And on the left hand side, you have maps, you have active call, like your phone integration and so on. And then you have your media player, followed by the trip computer, giving you a little bit of insight on how you're driving, how much your fuel you're burning, and so on. Kind of came to the airport with a heavy foot, so gas mileage, not the greatest, but whatever. Short-term memory, long-term memory over the course of I think a few months or a few weeks. I don't really know. I don't pay attention to it. And Audi's really great on telling you what's consuming fuel. Right now, air conditioning is taking up and burning fuel. Now, I didn't really option this Audi with every single driver aid possible. The one that comes standard, the way I understand it, is the Audi Presense. Now, this thing, it's not really showing you anything at this moment, but if someone was to walk across the rear or the front of the car, this thing will start beeping. I've had a few times where this car just like unexpectedly hits the brake. It thinks that there is someone in front of it or on the blind spots, and then it just hits the brake real hard, and you just get jerked, and you wonder what's going on. Anyways, it's a cool little safety feature, but I wish there was a way to turn it off. Maybe if I turned off traction control, and that might do it actually. Yeah, now that I think about it, that's what I might do. Now onto the far right hand side here is the fuel gauge. Really, really cool. And onto the very far left hand side you have the oil temperature and so on. So I think the Audi virtual cockpit is probably the best virtual cockpits that is out there today. Not really impressed by any of the BMWs or the Mercedes or the Volvo systems. it's not as crisp and clear as the display that you see here. It's really clear that Audi's invested a lot of time and money into this infotainment system, or into this virtual cockpit. And all of that virtual cockpit stuff is controlled via the steering wheel. All the nav buttons, call functions, all of that. Get into focus, will ya? Dial pads and so on. It's a really, really neat interior. It's a really fun place to be in. This is kind of my daily driver, and it keeps me entertained. Okay, let's switch over to the rest of the infotainment system. Now, I think, again, as I mentioned before, the Audi interior is probably the best interiors that you can get in this class. And I'm just blown away by it. I sat in this car once and I was just sold. I didn't really care what the exterior design was like, if it wasn't all that special compared to the previous gen. I kind of wanted to get this car. All right, let's do a quick nav through what's possible. All the climate controls, which is neat. I really like how it's touch as well. I can move through them. It's really cool. 3-zone climate control, and I can control that through this little button there. And then you have this really cool trackpad, which acts as, a rotary dial, so you can kind of navigate through the menus on the infotainment system. But what's really cool is that this center pad here is actually touch sensitive. So let's say we go to the navigation. So we go to navigation, and if we start, so turning the dial to the right, clockwise that is, it will zoom the map in, turn it counterclockwise, and it zooms the map out. So that's navigation. Now, if I hit pull this dial, push it to the left, let's say, it brings in all the extra menus and the options that go with that screen. So now let's say I want to enter a destination input. I'll go there. Now here's the cool thing about the trackpad here. It's kind of like a trackpad. It's a dial all in one. And if I start writing something, say S, shows up. I do an S again. Oh, I think S is a 5. Back out. So let's say I want to go home. And that's it. So I think that's kind of cool. The newer Audis, the 2020 or the 2019 ones, especially the A7s and the A6s, they're kind of going away without all these dials. So you're not going to get all this tactile feedback that you get in these designs. And I think I might miss that. The fact that you're going to have like a full dash that's going to be a touchscreen may get a little boring real fast. It's going to smudge. It's going to get oily. You're going to have to constantly rub it and clean it. I don't know. I'm going to have to try it to see what it's like. But I'm really enjoying the interior here. Back to the infotainment system. So that you saw a little bit about what the infotainment system is with the navigation. You have your telephone, which is weird as I record via Bluetooth on my YouTube. It seems to think I have a phone call in progress. I'm not going to disconnect it, so let's just leave it at that. I think what might be happening is that it's using my car's speakers and microphone system to record this video, which is quite interesting. Anyways, let's go back to the menu. Audi Connect, I haven't really signed up for that. The smartphone interface, finally, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay with enough ports in the little cubby compartments here, in the cubby compartments, that can plug in 2 USB devices, which is pretty awesome. Settings of your car. We looked at map, navigation, telephone integration, media, the radio. I barely use the radio really. The sound system. I'm not much of a sound guy. I'm pretty happy with the way things are set up. Out of the factory, I don't really listen to a whole lot of music on the car, mainly because I enjoy hearing the engine notes. And once in a while, I'll play the music when I'm in the mood. But other than that, it's nice and quiet, and the ambient noise being the engine noise. Now I can set up the vehicle as well. This is where I find things a bit interesting as well. This is the Audi Drive Select, as we've seen in the previous generation. It hasn't really changed much, really. You have comfort, you have auto, and dynamic. I typically just leave it in dynamic because that's the way I like to drive it. And the kind of things that's tunable in this car, because it hasn't got all the options, is the engine. It's all about the throttle mapping here with the engine control here. Control whether you want comfort, auto, or dynamic. Steering, again, electrically assisted steering, therefore you can control how much assistance it's giving you. You wanted more of a sporty response in the steering input. Leave it at dynamic. I think for me, dynamic feels a bit more natural than the others, and I'm glad I didn't get the dynamic steering, which I had in the B8.5 Audi S5. I found it really disappointing. Then there's the sport differential. That really makes a difference. This is the thing that rotates the car around through the bends. So leaving it at dynamic means it's always very sensitive to throttle input and steering input. And as a result, it'll rotate the car around the corners or around the turns. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. You really have to push the car to feel it. But I just leave it at dynamic. I don't really notice the difference. Engine sound, this is really cool. I think you just want to leave it in dynamic. This generation, the B9 generation of the S5, S4s, the turbo V6s are way louder than the B8 B8.5 S4 and the S5s, which were supercharged V6s. So there you go. It doesn't have the adaptive suspension, and I do not miss it one bit. Actually, I find the S4 to be far more compliant with the steering input and the driving feel than the S5 did. This is partially because the S5 is made wider and it's also heavier, and you really do notice it. But compared to the previous generation, both cars have come a long way in terms of how it handles. That thing you call understeer seems to be somewhat not there, which is kind of a neat thing. Anyway, so we have the settings for the drive select, and then you can go into various other aspects of the car. You can do vehicle settings, or you can set the date and time, what you want the steering button to have. There's like a hotkey. You can decide what you want that hotkey to do. The seats. Now, I don't really know what happened here, But in the previous generation of the infotainment system for the B8 and B8.5, in the seat section, you had the ability to do control or set settings on a driver's seat or the passenger seat. And what was cool about the passenger seat setting was that you could align the passenger seat with the driver's seat. This is great for blind spot clearance and things like that. But I think that might have been more of a Audi S5 or A5 thing, the two-door variants as opposed to the four-door. Not as much of a deal, a big deal here. Then you can control the exterior lighting, really around how long you want the lights to be on, when you leave the car, and so on. Interior lighting, which is kind of cool. Which is really neat here. So if I was to change the colors, I don't know if you can actually see this in the light here, but right now I have it set to Audi Drive Select. This just means that the ambient light inside the car changes based on whether I go comfort, auto, or dynamic. In dynamic, some of the accent lighting is kind of red and white, which kind of gives it the sporty feel. Now I can change it to go, let's say, maritime blue, and maritime blue is what changes here, which is kind of cool. Anyways, I don't really worry about this too much. I just leave it in Audi Drive Select, and I'm gone. Not really worrying about it. Central locking, garage door opener, and so on. Let's go back. Driver assistance, like I said, it doesn't have a whole lot of things going on with this car. Speed warning, your standard thing. Parking aid. It does have a heads-up display. You could probably see that here. There's the heads-up display, 0 kilometers an hour. And then it'll overlay some of the navigation data on there as well. I don't really know what efficiency assist is. Never really thought about what that would be. This is the pre-sense thing that I talked about, where it hits the brakes when it thinks it's about to hit something or there's oncoming traffic. Kind of takes you by surprise sometimes. Blind spot detection, which I always leave on. Rain sensors, yes. Automatic wipers, yes, I like that. Air conditioning, not a whole lot going on there other than to recirculate the air. Service checks, the regular things like tire pressure monitoring, oil levels, service intervals, and setting the wiper to service mode so you can actually fold the wiper out in case you're washing your car and so on. So those are all the vehicle settings on this car. If you get the full driver assistance package, you're going to have a flurry of settings here that you can play around with. I don't have a lot of that here, so keeps it nice and simple. What else do we got? Well, there you go. In the settings, this is just the infotainment setting in terms of what phones you've got connected, display brightness, and so on, language and settings and things like that. Well, there you have it. Since we spoke for about 15 minutes here, and I am still waiting for the aircraft to have a gate assigned to it so my wife can come out and we can go home. But doesn't seem like that's happening, so I'm going to be sitting here for a little bit longer, but I'm going to end this video because it's been 20 minutes of me just talking about this car. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Do you have a B9 Audi S4 or the A4 with virtual cockpit and the latest and greatest infotainment system? Let me know what you guys think. Is this one of the best infotainment systems that are out there and the best virtual cockpits that's out there as well? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.